Today's episode features the GT73VR Titan Pro 17-inch laptop. Is this the ultimate solution to replacing a gaming desktop? Let's find out. First, a big shout out to our friends over at MSI Canada for lending us a unit so that we could check it out. When I found out that they would be sending us this model, the Titan Pro, which is one of their higher spec laptops that they currently have, I was super stoked to see what kind of performance I would be getting out of this machine. Let's start off with an exterior tour. This beast measures 427.99 millimeters by 313.94 millimeters by 44.7 millimeters, and it weighs in at 8.59 pounds. So, as you can tell, it's not a thin, dainty gaming laptop. Oh no, baby got back. The GT73VR's lid is aluminum black with metallic red accents, and of course you have the MSI and Gaming Dragon logos. On the front, we have 3 indicator LEDs for Wi-Fi, battery, and hard drive activity. On the right hand side, we've got 2 USB 3.0 ports, a full-size SD card reader, ventilation, and a Kensington lock. On the left hand side, we have more ventilation, 3 more USB 3.0 ports, and some 3.5mm ports for line out, line in, microphone, and headphones. At the back of the GT73VR, we have a killer Ethernet port, mini display port, Thunderbolt 3 through USB Type-C, HDMI, and AC power, as well as 2 more ventilation spots. And on the bottom, we have 4 rubber feet, the 2 3-watt speakers, and 1 5-watt woofer, and a whack ton of tiny honeycomb mesh vents for all of the cooling. Lifting up the lid reveals a 17.3-inch IPS 4K display with a 1080p 60 frames per second webcam at the top. Opposite the screen is the SteelSeries keyboard, which has really been a solid staple in MSI laptops over the last few years. This keyboard is no different with its full color backlighting with a compact number pad. To the right of the number pad, we have some shortcut keys like max fan speed, streaming shortcut, SteelSeries lighting, and the discrete graphics card button, and of course, we can't forget about the power button. Speaking of power, this is the power brick that the MSI laptop comes with. It's quite hefty. Now for the juicy specs. The GT73VR is running an Intel Core i7-6820HK clocked at 2.7 GHz with a turbo boost of 3.6 GHz, an 8GB GTX 1080, 2 512GB NVMe SSDs in Super RAID 4 configuration with a 1TB 7200 RPM SATA hard drive for a total amount of storage of a whopping 2 TB. The GT73 also has 4 16GB DDR sticks of memory for a total of 64 gigs. Yes, that's right, 64 gigs of RAM. Finally, the GT73VR has Bluetooth 4.0, AC Wi-Fi, and runs on Windows 10 Home. So with these kinds of specs, the GT73VR is definitely looking like a contender for being a desktop replacement. And yes, for those of you who are wondering, the VR in GT73VR does mean that this laptop is VR capable. Now let's talk about the user experience you can expect with the GT73VR Titan Pro. First up, the speakers. Why? Well, for some weird reason, the speakers on our sample here were defective, so I'm not able to give you a review of them. That's not the fault of MSI, it's just the luck of the draw of the sample that we were given. Next up, the screen. As with all IPS screens, they have great color reproduction and great viewing angles. The matte finish on this particular 17.3-incher is standard, and it doesn't cause any unnecessary glare. And obviously, with 4K screen on the Titan Pro, ultra high def content is great, and with the extra screen real estate, video editing is easier with the larger timeline. The keyboard by SteelSeries is nothing new to the MSI lineup of gaming notebooks like I mentioned earlier. The keys don't feel mushy, and they offer a range of different lighting modes like gaming, breathing, audio, and wave. To adjust any of this, just open up the Dragon Center app and choose the LED Wizard tab. And while I found the physical spacing of the keys on the keyboard to be well placed, the height at which your hands sit while typing gets a little fatiguing. This is mainly due to the height required for the main body of the laptop to house the cooling components. It's a definite trade-off. Although I do admit having a thick laptop like this and not including an optical drive seems like a small oversight, But then again, I haven't used an optical drive on a PC in years. Now moving on with battery life, I will have to say that the battery life on the GT73VR was average for a gaming laptop. I managed to squeeze out less than 75 minutes of Watch Dogs 2 gameplay before the low battery warning popped up. But in terms of everyday tasks, I managed to more than double the game time at just a bit over 2.5 hours. This was with medium screen brightness and the keyboard backlighting off. Of course, your mileage may vary. In terms of performance, we put the GT73VR through a few benchmarks, and here are the results. In Cinebench, the laptop scored 59.75 FPS for OpenGL and got a CPU score of 856 CB. For hard drive performance in Crystal DiskMark, the NVMe SSDs, the sequential read and write speeds were 3.19 GB per second and 2.649 GB per second, respectively. In 3D Mark Firestrike, we reached a score of 12,408. In Skydiver, we hit a score of 12,782. And for Time Spy, it was a score of 6,347. And for Unigine Heaven on 4K Ultra settings, we hit a score of 898 with an FPS of 35.7, a minimum FPS of 18.5, and a max FPS of 83.6. Moving along to gaming with the MSI GT73, it was quite smooth. It didn't even flinch when playing games like CSGO and Watch Dogs 2 at max settings, although you can argue that CSGO at max settings is kind of moot. Anyways, I will say that during gaming sessions though, the fan will get loud, like 69 decibels loud, so just be ready for that. Same goes for VR performance. The fan does tend to get a bit loud, but the performance there is smooth as butter. So what does this all mean? Is the GT73 VR Titan Pro a proper desktop replacement? In a word, yes. It's got everything you could ever want or need in a desktop in a portable notebook form factor. Yes, the GT73 VR Titan Pro costs $4,799 in Canada, and that might seem like a lot, but is it really? I decided to spec out a similar desktop PC on PCPartPicker.com. Now I included a 4K monitor, mouse, RGB keyboard, and 2.1 speakers as well, since the GT73 has a 4K screen, trackpad, keyboard with RGB, and 2.1 speaker setup. Now some people could argue that the parts I picked out, like the case and the power supply, might be overkill, or they look ugly and aren't necessary. Yeah, I know, but I was quickly trying to spec something comparable if I had the same amount of money to spend, and I picked what I liked. So here we go. Anyways, the system I picked out ended up being roughly $4,500. So the GT73 VR is priced out pretty fairly. It's an extra $300 difference, which is pretty much what you would pay for the ability to have portability, an SD card reader, which I could have included, and Thunderbolt capability. I mean, the GT73 VR is on the heavier side, but it's packing some great hardware. But if you are turned off by the price, MSI offers over 20 models in their GT series lineup. Plus, they have their GS, GE, GP, and GL series of laptops as well. So I'm sure you can find one that fits your needs and budget. Okay, to sum things up, the GT73 VR offers premium performance, rated storage options, and a 4K IPS screen. But the GT73 VR is heavy, can get noisy during gaming, has no optical drive, and the battery life could be a little better. But at the price of $4,799, it's actually priced quite close to a gaming desktop of the same caliber. So the GT73 VR gets my vote as a great desktop replacement for anyone who is looking for top tier performance. If any of you are interested in the GT73 VR Titan Pro laptop, click here or the link in the description to learn more. Thanks for checking out the video, guys. Click over here for previous videos. Check us out on Twitter over there. But as always, like the video if you liked it. Comment down below for fans with benefits. And subscribe for more videos like this from NCIX. We'll see you later.